Welcome to the Korea Society. Our theme tonight is coffee and bagels. Our speakers tonight are Adam and Taon Kang, co-founders of Coffee Meets Bagel. For those of you who don't know them personally, they're twins. And then Adam has experience working at Avon Products as well as Amazon, leading efforts to understand consumer needs and behavior to deliver superior product experiences. After graduating from Harvard Business School, Adam was excited to start a business that leverages technology to bring something truly valuable to customers. Town lived and worked in Korea, Japan, New York, India, and Hong Kong in a variety of roles that spanned from strategy and business development, marketing research, to investing finance. Prior to joining her sisters to launch Coffee Meets Bagel, she's a proud graduate of Stanford Graduate School of Business. And our moderator tonight is Christina Choi, the editorial director at WeWork, a platform for creators. She joined the company once she completed her master's degree in journalism from Northwestern University. Her previous experience includes stints at a fashion startup, Lucky Magazine, Elle, and 17, among other publications. So enjoy the evening. We're going to have a Q&A afterwards. Thank you.
So hi guys, thanks so much for taking the time to sit down with us at the Korea Society. First, I kind of want this to just be very conversational. So let's start from the beginning. So do you want to tell us where you guys grew up and how did your paths diverge?
Oh yeah. Well, we grew up together. We're very close. So first of all, I'm Arum. This is Daun. In case it's confusing. So a little bit about us in the background. So we were actually born and raised in Korea. So I have an older sister and a younger brother. So we're from a pretty big family. And we grew up in Korea until we were in high school. And it was our dad's Korean dream to always study in the US, and he never got to do it. So he wanted his daughters to study here. So out of all the places, he sent us to Hawaii to study English and go to school there. And so we started, I guess, in high school in Hawaii. And it was, literally a paradise. I think we were very fortunate to grow up there. It's a very safe place. And my parents, because they still had to stay in Korea and work there, it was just the three of us, my older sister, the two of us, really living together. And I think that's when we really grew close together. And I think it was a great platform for us to actually even do business together. And after that, we decided to move to the East Coast as far as we can get to from Hawaii to go to college. So we went to school together in Philadelphia. We went to University of Pennsylvania. And I guess after that, we ended up staying in the East Coast for a while until we diverged to go to business school separately. And then for a few years, we did our own thing, different careers, very different careers. And Coffee Meets Bagel really brought us back together. So that's the...
Yeah, so how did the opportunity to start the app come about, and why coffee and then why bagels?
Yeah, it's a pretty unique name. Do you want me to...
Well, so why don't you talk about how we got it started? I can
Yeah.
have the name.
So it was about 2 years ago. I graduated from business school, and so like Claudia mentioned, I've always been in the consumer product industry. I love being in this space. So I worked at Avon Cosmetics for a while in their consumer insights group. So what that was about is, basically combination of talking to a lot of customers to do customer research, etc., plus analytical modeling work. So I loved supporting marketing as well as sales organizations to do that. But then what Avon Cosmetics really lacked was technology, basically. It's a very old company. It's 150 years old. And so I really wanted to learn more about e-commerce, how companies are leveraging technology to really change their business model infinitely. And Avon was not the place to really learn about that. So that's when I decided to go to business school. And I worked at Amazon, which is, I think, a great place to learn about e-commerce. And after that, I really knew that I wanted to stay in the technology space. So it was really hard after graduating, deciding, okay, do I go back to Amazon? I came out to San Francisco to interview with a bunch of startups also, and had a few options to join a company. But at the end, I think in my heart, I knew I was ready to start a business. Um, we grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. Our parents are both entrepreneurs and have always encouraged us to start a business. And that's pretty much the best way to really contribute and leave legacy in the world. So I've always wanted to do that. And so I felt ready, and I was really lucky enough to have two partners who have very complementary skills. So we three of us sort of looked at different business opportunities together. And at school, I studied a lot of different social networking services, including obviously like the Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, but also dating market as well, because it is essentially a social networking platform. And so, there were two main things that really motivated us to really look into this space. One is the market opportunity. I mean, this is a big business, and it's pretty amazing, the number of singles around the world, especially in the US developed countries, is just growing a lot. So the demand for this kind of service, I think it's already very high. I think it'll only grow. And the second thing is, just the product wise, we didn't see, even though there are tons of products in this market, we just didn't see a product that would really fit, especially women's needs. And so we had a great product idea. We saw the market opportunity, and that's when we decided, okay, let's try this together. And I guess to your second question, coffee and bagel
Yeah.
is
So-
down ones too.
Yeah, so we decided to, choosing a name for your company or your product is always a challenge, right? You want to make it unique, but not so difficult that people have a hard time remembering what your name is. And so we thought about it a lot. Like Ara mentioned, it was important to us that we appeal especially to women, because that's kind of like who we had in mind when we designed Coffee Meets Bagel. So we wanted to make it sound cute and safe. And it is a dating company, so and we targeted young professionals in the very beginning. So we thought to ourselves, what is the one thing that a lot of young professionals look forward to every day at work? Well, it's coffee break. So we wanted to play with the concept coffee, and what goes well with coffee. We chose bagel because we started in New York City, so it's Coffee Meets Bagel.
Yeah. Actually, we did pretty interesting branding study also from the beginning about when we were deciding about the name, because we wanted to figure out what is the positioning that we really wanted to have. And the idea of actually curating very limited quantity of content or
Well,
product.
actually, maybe we should talk about Coffee Meets Bagel first, because I'm sure
Oh,
how
yeah.
it works. Yeah.
So hopefully everybody here, if you're single, have tried this. But in case you don't know what it is, the way Coffee Meets Bagel works is we curate one person for you, one single person a day at noontime. So at noon, you'll get a push notification from us, and there's absolutely no searching or browsing. So you just kind of get who we curate for you. And we curate based on obviously your profile, the data that we collect when you first sign up, and the more data that we have over time as you make your decisions to like or pass on a person, we get to learn more about you. So we curate this person. You have 24 hours to decide if you want to like or pass. And if there's a mutual like, then we connect you directly by chat or text message. So that's essentially the sort of basic way the service works. And the idea came from Guild Group, which is hopefully everybody knows what Guild Group is, which is pretty much a retailer that started the flash sale model. So what they did is every day at noontime, they curated a handful of luxury, sort of high brand fashion items. And if you don't come on time, you may go out of stock and you lose the opportunity. And we absolutely loved what they did with their branding, as well as the model of training customers to expect something fresh, something that are professionally curated every day at a certain time. So we decided to bring this concept to dating, and I think it has really appealed to a lot of people. But going back to your question, when we did branding study, because Guild Group is very high end, initially we were thinking, oh, maybe we should actually position this as more high end exclusive. And so we did testing among users, like what actually appeals to them when it comes to dating product. It was interesting. Men and women behave very differently when it comes to, I think, any consumer product, but especially when they engage with dating products. So men absolutely love the image of this exclusiveness, this, luxury because their feedback was, I feel like I can, date models here, etc. Women absolutely hated this. And the feedback we got was, oh my God, this feels like an escort service. And I feel like I have to compete with, models or other, hot people, whatever. So it's very interesting. It's different. So because we were targeting women, we wanted to make this very accessible, comfortable, pretty much like next door neighbor type of brand. And so that's the birth of Coffee Meets Bagel. Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, it sounds like you guys are really trying to appeal to women, and I'm sure
Yeah.
there are a lot of dating apps out there. So, how do you feel like you guys are differentiating yourselves from the other apps that are in the marketplace?
Okay, I think for us, like Ara mentioned, the way it works is like best curation. And there's an interesting study that we like to share when it comes to like the why we designed the product this way. Because again, going back to the fundamental difference between how women and men date, there is a very famous professor who focuses on social network research at HBS. And he did a research on Facebook and how different gender groups like men and women behave differently on Facebook. What do you guys think is the most popular activity on Facebook? Anyone? Photo stalking, yeah. So viewing photos, right? Like that's what most of us do on Facebook. But interestingly, men and women behave very differently, even when it comes to the same activity, viewing photos. The number one activity on Facebook is men viewing photos of women they don't know. Number two most popular activity is men viewing photos of women they know.
So they're female friends.
Right. Number three is women viewing photos of women they know, so their own female friends. Number four is women viewing photos of women they don't know, so they're friends of friends who happen to be women. So what this tells you is that there's no one looking at men's photo, right? even women don't look at men's photo, and so that just tells you like a lot of guys. I'm generalizing here, obviously, but a lot of guys just drive a lot of entertainment value purely from viewing a lot of photos of women. But for women, it can be quite frankly tiring to view photos of irrelevant photos of a lot of irrelevant men. And that kind of explains to you why there's so many online dating products that are out there that focuses so much on searching and browsing. It's all about just providing as many photos as possible because that is a very entertaining activity for guys. But it's not very ideal for a woman, and that's kind of how we thought about when we designed Coffee Meets Bagel. It's all about quality versus quantity.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you went to Harvard Business School and you're also a product of Stanford Business School. And I'm sure there are a ton of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs in this audience. Do you guys feel like business school was necessary to launch your own business?
In my case, I absolutely think so. I think there are several things that matter when it comes to starting your own business. If you're obviously a veteran entrepreneur, it doesn't really matter, what degree you have. You have the experience, you have the track record. So, your experience speaks about what your ability is. For first-time entrepreneurs, I think it was absolutely critical that I had this business background, and the fact that so many people in the Valley also is a graduate of business schools, I think helped a lot in terms of networking. And at the beginning, when you don't have a track record to actually show, the network and the education you have matters a lot. And I think that's the reality. So for me, I think it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think, especially when it comes to fundraising, also, because a lot of VC guys do have business B school background, that actually helps a lot. One thing that I do get asked a lot is for people who didn't go to business school, like, is it necessary? Is it absolutely critical? Not really. I think if you are especially an engineer or you have something that you specialize in other than business, there really is no need for you to actually go to business school just to get a degree. When your expertise lies in something else, it's probably better for you to find a partner who has a business expertise or who went to B school, so who can provide the level of network that you need in order to get your startup get going. So it's not necessary, but it's definitely beneficial.
Yeah. And how did you guys to start your business right away versus working in the industry a little bit more and gaining more experience that way?
I think definitely it would have helped if I had some, dating related or consumer or technology background in the past. I think it would have definitely helped. So when we were fundraising, especially, I think there was um, I wouldn't say punishment, but we definitely got in terms of all the terms that you might get offered, etc. I think there's definitely discount if you don't have, entrepreneurship experience or if you don't have industry expertise. So in that sense, if you are somehow interested in an industry and you don't have any background, like Down said, you can always find the partner who may have more experience in the industry. I think it'll definitely help you. And it's easier to convince people, obviously, to invest in you if you have the experience. So that's why for us, I think we didn't even start fundraising until we actually had the product and had some traction. And the traction, when we say traction, it doesn't have to be like millions of users, but if you have a certain strategy, for us, it was we really wanted to focus on New York just to be able to show that there is a demand for this kind of product, and our product has, is something that people really want. And the way you can show that is using metrics, engagement metrics. And we had really high engagement metrics at the time, even though our product was still small. So I think those numbers can really help you when it comes to fundraising, especially if you don't have industry expertise or if you don't have any successful exits in the past.
The other thing that people don't really talk about is starting a company is essentially a big risk you're taking, right? And especially out of B school, a lot of you probably are in debt because it's such an expensive endeavor. And so, and you have to be ready when you're starting a company. Maybe you're not going to be paid for a certain period of time. Maybe you think it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's going to take longer, or you're going to take very little. And so it is a risk that you're going to have to think about. And it does help. So I guess we're different. She started a company right after B school. I worked for 2.5 years after B school in banking. And it actually helped me a lot, just psychologically, having some economic, some money saved, thinking to myself, okay, if this doesn't go well, then at least I have some kind of a comfort, cushion that I can rely on. That actually helps a lot too, even though it doesn't get talked about a lot. You should think about it.
Yeah, it always takes a lot longer than you think.
Wow. Okay, so I know both of you actually worked in a corporate environment, and starting a business is completely different. How is that transition like? Like going from a corporate environment where there's a ton of resources and then starting something from scratch?
Yeah, it's really different. Well, first of all, I think even now we have to wear many hats, right? So I remember when I first started, like I did everything from, I even remember going to Columbia to hand out flyers and everything, to basically all the shit work that you want to have somebody else do, you have to do it yourself. So you really need to be willing to, roll up your sleeve and do everything. Like, and I mean everything. Even now, because we don't have office manager, I do a lot of and I don't want my employees to have to get distracted about, things like not having enough snacks or things like that. So just making sure these little things, it's time consuming, and it's not really a fun work for anyone, but you have to sort of end up doing it until you get to a certain point where you can hire many people to do that. So that's one other thing. My investor, our first investor, told us that when they see people with business school background, the first thing they worry about is this person scrappy enough to and really willing to do everything it takes to grow a company, or do they just like the idea of starting something and not willing to really dig in and roll up their sleeves and do everything it takes. And I think for us, we were ready to do that. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. I think for anyone thinking about it, it may be a good experience to try working at a startup. There's tons of startups in New York City also, to see what it's like before you actually jump into starting something, if you're not really sure whether you're ready for it.
One thing that was the most difficult for me to, I guess, adopt is being able to make decisions really fast and when you don't have the answer. I think a lot of us who are used to doing, making decisions at corporate, you have a process that you follow. Like in investment banking, when I was making investment decision, there is a certain 1, 2, 3, 4 things that I have to do. And then you do analysis paralysis up to the point of paralysis. You do all these kinds of analysis. Then you make a group decision. I mean, this could take months, right? And they do it for the right reason because they have a lot to lose. But at startup, you don't have a lot of resources, like Christina mentioned. You don't have a lot of time. You have to move super fast, and you're never going to have the right answer or the answer because you're doing it for the first time. And so you're just going to have to choose one, just make a freaking decision and go with it. And that's really hard because I think for most of us, we want to do the right thing. And when you don't know what is the right thing, like what are you going to do, right? So just shifting the mentality was really difficult for me.
Yeah.
And something that I still try to work at.
Okay. And I know you've like briefly touched upon it about how when you're starting a company, like you want to make sure you're doing the right thing. And I know a lot of startups, they're so afraid to fail, but I think part of that journey is making mistakes. So what has
Exactly.
been your biggest screw up so far and how did you guys recover?
I'm sorry?
What has been your biggest screw up so far and how did you guys recover?
Well, I say this a lot when I talk about, what advice can you give to aspiring entrepreneurs is one of the biggest mistakes I think I've made is not trusting my gut, especially when it comes to people decisions. So early on, we actually, first of all, hiring engineering talent anywhere right now, I think in the US, maybe outside the US too, is very hard. I think in New York, it's especially hard. In Silicon Valley, there's tons of competition. So it's very, very hard. So when it comes to, getting an engineer, especially from somebody who doesn't have engineering background, you end up making different kinds of mistakes. But the first non-CTO hire that we had to make, from the beginning, I didn't feel 100% convinced about this person, but I went with it because our CTO liked him and because we really needed somebody.
And he was smart. He was really smart.
Very smart, MIT engineer, has tons of great experience. But I just had this inkling of feeling I couldn't really even explain. So I just decided to ignore it and I was like, hire, great. But then pretty soon, at that time, we were still 5 people, 3 co-founders, 2 engineers, including him. And pretty soon, I could tell that he wasn't a great fit for us not because, he was a great guy, which I think made it even harder for me to make any decision afterwards. But especially because he required a lot of management attention. So I always had to check in with him, how things are doing, etc. Which at that time, maybe when you're like the size of Google, it doesn't really matter. But when you're at that time, 5 people, you really need everybody to be performing at 150% and be able to do things totally independently because you just don't have that kind of time. But then, and so we knew there was a problem. I knew there was a problem, but I dragged this on and I had many talks with him too. But I dragged this on for probably like 10 months before the 3 of us and the CTO even sat together to talk about it. Why? Because I was so worried that one, our team is so small. If we have to let somebody go, like what's going to happen to the morale? We need this person, etc. All the kinds of things I just worried me. And plus, I've never fired anyone, so it was kind of scary for me. So, and I like this person. So I just let this drag for so long. And then afterwards, we just had to bite the bullet and do it because it just wasn't the right fit. And that part was really hard, but dragging it on, I think that's the biggest mistake. I did a huge disservice to the company. And the funny thing was, actually, by the time he was let go, we actually had another person we hired. And I often asked him for feedback about this person, and he said, oh, it's great, etc. But then after we let him go, I wanted to make sure this guy was okay because he worked very closely with him. And in his reaction was, yeah, actually, now that he's not here, I think we can move faster. Which then I was like, okay, why didn't you tell me this before? It would have made my job a lot easier. But I think that's the other thing. People aren't always very forthcoming and honest about feedbacks.
Because
And-
no one wants to say bad things about
Yeah.
somebody else, right?
And so when it comes to people development, communication, feedback, you really have to make sure you create a culture that where people feel comfortable raising these kind of issues. I feel like I didn't do that. That's why this person probably didn't come to me and told me some of the concerns that he had. And he only told me after this person was let go. So I think after that, I think when it comes to really hiring decisions, etc., I really obviously you listen to the team's opinion, etc. But I think just trusting your gut instinct can really help. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure since you guys have started the app, you have accumulated a ton of awesome data, which I would love to take a peek at.
Yeah.
But what are
I'm
some
always
interesting
just-
findings that you guys have found through all of the stuff that you've seen come in?
Oh my God, we have the juiciest.
Yes, please
juiciest-
share all of them.
Yeah.
I think one thing that really surprised us, again, going back to the gender difference. So, one of the stereotype or belief that a lot of people in the online dating industry have is that women are not willing to pay. They don't want to spend money, and it's all the guys who actually pay for the subscription, and that's where where all the revenue comes from. But what we actually found at Coffee Meets Bagel is that women are willing to pay, but it's just the type of products that they're interested in are very different, and so for those of you who don't know, we have some items that you can purchase. So the basic service is free, but so we have a freemium model, and one item is, the match every day is only for 24 hours. So when it expires, you can request a rematch if you want another chance with this match, or we call them bagels. Or after your bagel for the day, we actually show you 10 more people who you can actually choose to take. And so those kind of a little bit more, I guess I call it more forthcoming or aggressive, like, hey, I kind of like you and I want another chance with you type of items. A lot of guys purchase, not a lot of girls. But a lot of women are really interested in learning more about themselves. And so there's an item, there used to be an item called Reveal. And what you could do with Reveal is you could actually handpick some of the bagels you got and find out if that person liked or passed you. And so even though you may not be interested in this person, a lot of women actually did reveal on their bagels because they just wanted to find out if that person liked them or not. Or there's an item called Mirror Mirror, which actually gives you a report card on how you're doing on Coffee Meets Bagel versus other women or other men. We find that a lot of women are interested in that kind of items as well, because again, it kind of goes back to learning more about themselves. So that was kind of an interesting finding that we discovered.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, guys, please stop putting selfies on your profiles. God, I cannot tell you how many guys put their selfies on there. It totally doesn't work on women. But there's definitely, I mean, we learn a lot. There's definitely different behaviors in between gender, things that just work and things that don't work. Like, for example, another thing that we found was women especially find photos with outdoor background or food or pets really works really well. So things like that, we try to gather as much as data as possible to really educate our users, because at the end of the day, what we really want to do is help these people find somebody they can spend the rest of their life with. And so, yeah, now we have tons of data. We try to analyze this a lot. We work with right now part-time statistician to sort of parse this data and write interesting blog articles. Some of you probably read like OkCupid blog, which has really tons of interesting data. So those are the kinds of content that we were trying to also create so that we can educate more of our users as well.
Yeah, and so how many couples have you guys matched since?
Yeah, I mean, this is now in the thousands, right? So it's kind of, we almost lost track. But I mean, in terms of couples, that's several thousands. In terms of people who are now engaged or married, I think the latest count we had is about over 50.
That we know of.
That's amazing.
yeah.
So do they actually report back to you guys and tell you that?
Some don't, some do, some don't.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, some of my even my own friends, for whatever reason, didn't tell me. So I think it just boils down to their personal preference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I just found out one of my friends had a baby. Just had a baby with somebody they met on Coffee Meets Bagel, but he didn't tell me. So,
Okay.
but what we know is over 50, and it's always great too. So we have this tradition at the office where whenever we find out somebody's engaged, we have this big wedding bell that we ring, and then we send them T-shirts, Coffee Meets Bagel T-shirts, so they can wear it. And sometimes they take pictures and send it to us. We have yet to be invited to a wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like
But
you
we've
guys-
seen
yeah.
a lot of photos. Yeah.
Nice. So one question that I'm actually really curious about is, have you guys found love through the app in your personal life?
So she's married, so it would be
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would be bad if if she found somebody through Coffee Meets Bagel. I did find somebody who I dated for a year, but I'm back on Coffee Meets Bagel.
Well, here's hoping you
Actually,
find
it
a
was
new
so
bagel.
funny.
Yeah.
So well, I still call him Bagel that she dated for a year.
Yeah, I did it for a
Yeah,
year.
actually, I gave him to her. So we have this feature on Coffee Meets Bagel. So what we found is our users usually use the service with 4 or 5 other friends, and they're always talking about their bagels. Like, who did you get? What do you think? Especially girls. And so one of the things that we developed is ability to give or recommend maybe some people you got is really great, but it's not for you, but for somebody else. And you can actually give this person to your friends. And so for me, I'm on Coffee Meets Bagel. My profile says I'm not single, but I like connecting with our customers, so I'm on it. And one day I got this bagel, and it was very weird because the pictures were not good either. But for some reason, I felt like, oh my god, this guy must maybe really good for
She
Dawoon.
followed her instinct.
Yeah, so I gave it to her, and that was the bagel she ended up dating for a year. Yeah.
Wow.
This
that's
give
amazing.
feature actually is interesting. Again, going back to the gender difference. So when we developed this feature where you can give bagels to each other, a lot of women were like, "Oh my god, I love this feature!" Like, and we're using it all the time. A lot of guys were like, "Why? Why would I
Why would
give
I use this
bagels to my
feature?" Yeah.
friends?"
I confess I used it many times.
I just want it for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. And finally, my last question. So, are there any expert dating tips that you guys would like to share?
Well, no selfie.
Well, for women, maybe you can share something for men. Well, I guess one selfie. For women, we do find that women statistically are pickier than men, and
yeah.
for probably for good reason, because we are more concerned about safety and whatnot. But when we ask all the successful couples who found each other through Coffee Meets Bagel, hey, what is one advice you would like to give to the rest of the Coffee Meets Bagel members? It always comes down to like be more open, because I was really surprised at this bagel. I wasn't actually gonna even like. I met this person, and now it's kind of like turned into this amazing relationship. And so if it's like iffy, like, and just meet, because it's who they really are. Honestly, it's difficult to come across on paper, right? So that's one advice that I always give to our women members, everyone, but especially women members, because I know statistically we tend to be more picky.
Yeah, I would say a common thing I see among men is just not putting enough information. So one of the things that we do ask on the web, we don't do this on mobile yet, but is whenever people pass, we ask them, why did you pass? And the number one reason comes down to looks. So that one you can't really do much about. Well, that's not true actually. So the thing that you can do much about this looks is people put just like one photo, which is a total turnoff for most people, women and men. So you need to put at least the ideal number of photos we found is 3. And the second thing is quality of the photo really matters too. People put blurry photo or something like a lot of people say Waldo photo, where like there's like five other people, like you can't really tell who it is. Things like that all boils down to looks. I mean, then we can't really even tell who you are, so I'm gonna pass. And then the other number 2 reason, especially women say this a lot more, is just not having enough information. And this has 2 effects. When woman sees this profile that has not enough information, like one photo and didn't write anything, it just feels like this person is not taking this seriously at all. And so why should I like this person even though you may be the hottest person or whatever? Because it feels like it's just going to be a waste of click and waste of time. And so one thing I tell a lot of our male users is put something in there. It doesn't have to be a lot. In fact, our profiles are very much keyword based, so you can't even write that much. But when you think about it, you want to put enough information on there to get the person to be interested. Like, get them to think, interesting. I like to find out more about this person. That's really all you need to put. And it shows that you're taking this seriously. It shows that you're putting some thought into it. And I think that's a really important signal that women look for. So that's one tip I have.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I mean, you guys shared a
Yeah.
lot of great insight about starting a business and dating. And now we're going to open the floor up for questions.
I was curious, how many people here are from business school or have business school? Or, okay. And how many people actually have started a company? Oh, cool. And the rest are sort of thinking about it, maybe. Oh, yeah. How many people? I better see everyone.
So you talked about some of the grassroots efforts in acquiring users in the beginning, but can you talk a little bit more about how you grew from that and what your acquisition strategies are now and what's been most successful for you?
Okay. I hate answering this question because
It's a good question.
yeah. But then it's I don't. The reason why I say I hate answering this question is because my response seems like a cliche. But really, word of mouth has been the most effective channel for us, and it still is. So at the beginning, when we started, literally it was just, three of us. We had a landing page maybe 2 months before we launched the product, beta product, that said, "Hey, we're coming. Give us your email address so we can let you know when it's ready." And we just emailed and bothered our friends like so many times to ask their friends to give us emails, etc., just in New York. And I think we ended up having maybe a few thousand email addresses by then. I think it was less than 3,000 though, so like 2 to 3,000. And then when we launched, we just emailed these people, and that was really the beginning of the service. And once the service went live, literally I couldn't sleep at all. Like every day I was just looking at, okay, how many people are signing up, etc. Yeah. But then it just took off from there. And the unique thing that we had going, I think one of the things that helped was from the very beginning, even though we didn't have any sort of revenue model at the time, there wasn't any way to like buy something, but we still had our virtual currency where people could collect coffee beans. And it's interesting because it wasn't like they could do much with it, but still people really wanted to collect that. So, and one of the ways to collect it is to invite friends. And we did a lot of scrappy other things. Like at one point, our investors, I think, was really helpful in like pushing us to try many, many different things. So incentive-based invitation. Sometimes we actually required everybody to invite 10 people before you can even like get any bagels. And people hated it, but they still did it. That's actually not legal thing anymore. So I don't think it was ever legal. Yeah, but when you're small, you can just do whatever, right? And so and then also we targeted schools because we have obviously business school background. We targeted different business schools. Can you please like share this information with your classmates, etc.? All very grassroots things, right? And then afterwards, when you have obviously if your base gets bigger, the word of mouth effect becomes substantial as well. So once that took place, and I think this is also a reason why we just focused on New York, because we wanted to put all efforts into one concentrated area. Otherwise, if you're spread all over the place, especially for a business like ours, it's very localized. It's not very useful. So even like if you're gonna have 1,000 people, it's better to have it in all on one place. So we really concentrated all our efforts, And then afterwards, when we started launching in different cities, it was a lot easier because we already had user base in New York, and we really leveraged their network. Hey, we're going to San Francisco. Tell all of your friends who are in San Francisco that we're coming. And so that's sort of how we started growing. Yeah.
Could you speak about how the headcount of the company has grown over time, and anything you would add to the challenge of managing new people joining the company, and how you manage that growth?
I mean, we're still very lean and small, so we're 12 full time. I think one of the advice that we got from our investor, who is now sitting on our board, is be careful with hiring. The story that we shared, you don't want to hire so fast because you're just thinking about going aggressive and then end up having to let people go. And especially at a startup where you're the beginning, everyone who comes in will contribute to the culture of the company. I don't know who I'm speaking to actually. So we were actually very selective and selective about who we want to hire and how fast. Is there anything to add?
Managing them. Do you have any advice?
Let me think about that.
Yeah, I think one thing that we at the beginning didn't do was when you hire somebody, you just kind of start and like they just, all right, from day one they just go. But as we hired more people, so I think we were at 5 people for the longest time, and then just recently, about 2-3 months ago, we started hiring more aggressively up to 12. And what we now have done is we realized the really first week and first month of onboarding employees is very important, because that's sort of when they realize what the norms are, expectations are, what the culture is like. Every signal you make verbally, physically, or whatever, they learn from, they take away how they should be behaving. So really, we spent more time investing upfront, even though we're small and our resources are limited. Spending time on the first week, everybody really has to sit down with the new employee and take some time and taking them out, whether it's lunch, etc., and having them go through orientation in terms of like, here, this is the expectation, this is the norm. Really going through the values of our company, and the values we actually explicitly set together as a group, so that they can really start on the right footing, I think is very important.
Yeah, I agree. We ignored that in the beginning because we were like, oh, we hate processes.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important. Yeah, pays off in the long run.
One of the things that people wonder about with online dating is if people are telling the truth about themselves. So I was wondering, are there particular things that people lie about the most?
Well, one thing that comes to my mind is, so people inherently, sometimes it's kind of scary to see all these statistics, because the stereotypes and the prejudices we think about, but we don't actually say it, kind of like you see it in the numbers. So one thing that we do see is, people have like just natural preference towards other people like them, right? So for example, if you have the same school, the probability that you will like this person jumps up like a lot, especially for a woman. If you have the same ethnicity, if you have the same whatever, a lot of people actually state in their preference, like, I have no ethnicity preference. But when we actually look at the choices they make, they actually do have ethnicity preference, and it tends to be their own ethnicity, which is pretty interesting.
You mentioned your investor. I was just wondering how you went about finding funding, like especially in the early days.
So our first investor came through personal introduction, and you'll find that most of the investors, especially venture capitalists, and angels too, I think except one person was all through personal introductions of people that I knew, and that's really the best way to find one. And there were some that reached out to us, after they heard about the product, etc. I don't think those turned out to be as effective as like through personal introduction. So you really have to, I would say, if you are thinking about fundraising, etc., really start building your network. When you don't need to raise is probably the best time to get to know people. And so in New York, I'm sure there's a lot of events and meetups, etc., that you can take advantage of and to do all that foundation work and really get to meet people in the VC community. And then when you're actually ready, it becomes much easier to approach them as opposed to being like a complete stranger. Yeah.
One thing I want to add about fundraising is because it's a lot of entrepreneurs find it challenging, but it's a necessary evil. One advice that I got, and there are different school of thoughts, is that it's a numbers game. So our main investor is Lightbank, and we talked to many other investors as well. When you actually meet the right investor, it's not like you're telling the same story, but they just get it right away. Whereas if you don't talk to the right investor, who don't have the right experience, who don't know what anything about the industry, then you can say the same thing, but they're never going to get it. And so I do agree that it is a numbers game. It is about coming across that partner who understands you, and you can tell the same story, and they'll just get it right away.
Yeah, I think half the battle is really finding the right firm who understands the industry and is inherently interested in the industry. We've met tons of VCs who are just flat out not really interested in the dating space, which is fine. And you want them to be more upfront about it. Sometimes they just kind of end up wasting your time, but just finding the right people is also a lot of work. But I would say that's half the battle.
So there are rumors that you
Not
guys
allowed
are
to
on
ask
Shark Tank.
What?
There are rumors that you guys may appear on Shark Tank. So
Oh my God.
kind of going back to the earlier question. So if an investor comes in and wants to give you money and you guys agree to it, how do you decide how much equity and to give that investor, and how do you decide what to keep for yourself and potentially a guy who's going to paint your wall, do a mural, and so on?
Yeah. Well, I think in terms of equity, so like equity distribution and at least internally, it just becomes more like an internal discussion, like how do founders, divide equity, etc. So those conversations, it's always better to have it early rather than later. Even among the three sisters, we've had that conversation very early, and the easiest thing is to just say like, oh, it's going to be equal, but you really have to weigh the difference because later on it can be problematic. I know plenty of companies where this, founder equity split becomes a problem because they made it equal, but when, in reality, it really the responsibilities are not equal.
But it could also go the other way. There are tons of companies where they didn't make it equal, but they should have.
Yeah. So really, like, you need to really think about that, put some really thought into it, and have honest conversations. In terms of investors, it really comes down to what offers you get. Like, if you have competing offers, that's better. Like, the market's going to decide what value your company is, right? So, if you get one term that values you at like 10 million and nobody else is offering you, then that's going to be your value. Versus if there's another investor who's going to be valuing at a higher price, then it becomes so market really determines that. I think there's not much else you can do other than really going after, and so you want to get competitive bids, so that always works to your advantage. Yeah, but I think if you work with the right investor, yes, all investors are going to be pretty aggressive. They want to maximize their returns, etc. But if you work with the right investors who are experienced working with entrepreneurs. And this is why one of the advantages of being in Silicon Valley, because a lot of Silicon Valley investors are very experienced. They also don't want to be too aggressive because then if like founders end up being like diluting so much of their shares, there's no more incentive for them to go on and really try to grow this business either, right? So I think the right investor would try to find the right middle ground so that it's a win-win for both parties. Mm-hmm.
So how far is your product now from the very, very original idea? And what made you think that it was time for the launch? Like, how can you make sure it will be succeed? And, did you do any test or what made you think that you are confident enough to launch these products at the very, very beginning stage?
So to answer your question, the first question, I think our product has evolved a lot, but our core service is fundamentally the same. And I think actually we're one of the exceptions. Most companies end up pivoting, changing depending on the market reaction.
I mean, even LinkedIn started as a dating company, I think.
Yeah. And Facebook started as a sort of face mash. So they changed, right? For us, we were lucky enough to have the market fit from the beginning, and so our core service remained the same. But we also realized, for some people, one a day may not be enough. So we evolved depending on the customer segments that we serve, etc. The second question is how do you know actually the product is ready? You never know. And so the one thing that we really did was we spent probably less than a month first developing this thing called, you've probably heard of it, MVP, minimum viable product. That just sort of, you may have to do everything manually or something, but it's a usable product. And I had about 50 of my friends and their friends use it for a week. And so at that time, I was like matching people manually, sending out email manually at noontime, but then they could still check. And if they liked each other, they could actually chat on SMS. So that part was ready. And then when people tried it for a week, the response was really positive. I interviewed every single one of them too on the phone afterwards, like, what did you think? What did you not like, etc. And the response was really positive. And so that's when I had the confidence to say, okay, if I make this, just slightly better so that more than 50 people can use it at time, it's being able to scale it a little bit more, then it's probably ready to go to market. Yeah.
So I want to ask the last question of the night, but before I get there, I just wanted to say that the Korea Society is actually co-sponsoring the New York Korean Film Festival at BAM. So I actually have 2 pairs of tickets for anyone who's interested. One of them is for Futureless Things on Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Anyone wants them? You do? Okay, great. Now I have another pair. It's Men on High Heels. This is Saturday at 9:30 p.m. Anyone? Okay, great. Also, I'd like to thank the Korean Association of the Columbia Business School for co-sponsoring this event. And my last question to you guys is, what's next?
What's next, Arum? What's next is, we're just hitting tip of the iceberg here. So the way we think about it is we want to be, like our brand Coffee Meets Bagel, we want to be expert in everything that has to do with romantic relationship. And so right now we're really focusing on the discovery phase of relationship, introduction, etc. But I think that's the only beginning. There's a lot of things, other things that that are required where we can service our customers in order to get to a better relationship. And even after getting into a relationship, I think there's a lot of value we could add. And so in the long run, that's how we see the product evolving. But then, that's a long story. The next short-term steps, the plans that we really have is, we're only on iOS right now. Our Android users are really suffering. And so that the next platform, really being able to be available in multiple platforms is a big next milestone we have. And beyond the US, I think the market is just so much bigger. It's not as developed. I think that's why the market opportunity is bigger abroad. And so those are the sort of big next steps that we're thinking about. I think this company really has potential to be a dominant force in the dating space worldwide. And so that's where we're heading.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us. It was really fun.